Hello and welcome to our live Operacast recording as part of the 2020 Leeds Opera Festival. I'm David Ward. Over the next 45 minutes or so, we're going to discuss opera futures. What does, and more interestingly, what should the future of opera hold for artists and audiences? Now, thank you all so much for sending your suggestions in advance. We're going to discuss those and the thoughts of our panel this afternoon. If you've got any comments or ideas that come up during the recording, please do write them in the chat and we'll get on to as many as possible this afternoon. So I'm delighted to be joined by an esteemed panel to discuss these and more with me this afternoon. Making her Operacast debut, it's the conductor Olivia Clark. Hello, Olivia.
Hello.
How are things with you?
Yeah, not bad, thank you. Yeah.
Good. Now you're very excitingly in rehearsals at the moment for the English National Opera Drive-In Lab OM. How's that going, and how does the orchestra work in that? Are you above, underneath, behind? I mean, how does it kind of work logistically?
That's a sort of secret for the concert goers. But it's interesting that you said drive in, because you're not the first person to say that. The idea that you can just get your sort of Starbucks on the way and then drive out again. But no, it's drive and live. So it's at Alexandra Palace, and the idea is that you can bring your car, you can enjoy the opera from the car, and the audio will be fed into your car's microphone system, and it's really exciting just to be back in a rehearsal room and doing something in a new and fresh way. So yeah, it's been great so far. We've just finished week one of the red team's rehearsals. There's a red team and a blue team kept miles and miles apart, not allowed to go anywhere near each other. We're wearing masks for the rehearsals. The social distancing is in place. There's so much organisation and effort that's gone into getting this project on the way. So it's going to be good.
Like SWAT team policing meets opera, kind of red teams, blue teams, masks. Yeah, logistical nightmare. But it all sounds very exciting, a great initiative. We're also joined this afternoon, again making his Operacast debut, by the singer and all-round kind of 21st century polymath, Peter Brathwaite. Hello, Peter.
Hi there.
How are things with you?
I'm well, thank you. Enjoying a Sunday and the sun shining now, so I'm much happier.
Over lockdown, you've become somewhat of a kind of a social media minor celebrity with your Getty challenge. I mean, tell us a little bit about that for people that don't know what that is.
So the Getty Challenge is a challenge that's been set by the Getty Museum to recreate works of art in your own home using what you have to hand. So I've been doing this now since April. It's been a long time, and have recreated over 80 portraits featuring black sitters specifically.
It's really, I mean, I would highly recommend popping to Peter's Twitter to have a look. I mean, we were saying just before we came, I know it's such an amazing way of kind of highlighting these kind of artworks and the historical detail, but in a really kind of fun and creative way. So it's absolutely fantastic. Definitely recommend.
Thank you.
Pop up to Peter's Twitter to have a look at that. And our final panelist this afternoon, a familiar voice to Operacast, if not face, is the director, Emma Black. Hello, Emma.
Hi, David.
Hello, you've just been with us in Leeds, putting on an opera this week, Thomas and Sally. How was the return to the rehearsal room? I think you said it's your first opera you directed in, what, about a year and a half, is it?
Over a year. So the combination of motherhood and then COVID-19 means I've not done a lot of work. Yes, no, it was just incredible. Your producer took what I think is a very lovely photo of me. I'm just beaming during the rehearsal. No, it was just brilliant to be working again. And like Olivia said, just being back in the room, hearing live singers, hearing live musicians. It's just, there's nothing like it.
Well, you did a terrific job. So well done. Thank you for joining us this weekend. Right, let's get on to some chat then. So looking at opera future. I'm going to selfishly start by kind of introducing one of my ideas to see what the panel think. I say, if you're watching at home, do let us know your thoughts in the chat. So to kick us off then, we've been talking a lot recently, about how the freelance life it's a difficult way of life, especially obviously during the coronavirus pandemic. So few lifelines for freelancers. We've been talking a lot about how young artists have got very few opportunities to build careers, build roles. the climate crisis is upon us. We don't want to be flying around as much, kind of going from country to country, city to city. We also know that opera houses are under increasing financial pressures as well. So the first idea I want us to discuss is this idea of why don't we go back to the house model, this kind of repertory model of making an opera company with more permanently contracted singers at an opera house. It gives singers stability, 1 or 2 year contracts at a house, more opportunity for those singers to sing a range of roles, get that experience, less flying singers into opera houses to do all the roles, and cutting back on all of that kind of side of the business. And it reduces costs for the opera houses themselves as well, not having to fly people around, not having to house people, and not having those really, really expensive kind of freelance fees as well that kind of come with it. So that's the idea I want us to chew into to get off the mark today. Can I come to you first, Peter? As a singer, how would this idea kind of appeal to you? A 2-year contract, do kind of lots of different roles, or is part of the joy of being a singer for you getting to hop around different companies, do different projects with different people? What do you reckon to this idea?
I like the idea of a safety net. That's really attractive. But I'd say that I do enjoy the variety and working with different companies, and each experience is unique, and you get into a rhythm of working like that. So I think to suddenly find myself in that situation, it would take some getting used to. But I think that there's a lot to be said for being agile and drawing on quite a large pool of performers, especially when we're thinking about the stories that we're telling and the diversity that we're able to have when we draw upon a larger pool of singers rather than having a smaller ensemble working at an opera company. So yeah, I'm torn in a way, and obviously this period has made me wish for a greater safety net in this profession. But yeah, I'd be worried that this would restrict opportunities for the body of singers, the pool of singers that we have, and we're always replenishing the profession with fresh singers coming out of music colleges and directors and conductors, and so it's a tricky one.
I think that's a very fair point, and there's definitely something about that creative experience of having different people kind of coming in all of the time, kind of different perspectives. I mean, Olivia, you're at English National Opera at the moment on the Macaris Fellowship, so you're there for 2 years, sort of doing a similar sort of thing, I suppose, kind of getting a lot of that assisting experience, conducting some pieces. I mean, what do you kind of think from a conductor's perspective? Do you like the idea of having a constant sort of changing sea of faces, or is there something quite nice about that repertory model, kind of building a kind of a company, a ethos around kind of a core group of performers?
Yeah, I mean, sorry, connection went a little bit funny, but I got the main gist. And I really agree with what Peter is saying. I think it depends on what stage of your career you're at, because as you said, for me, just really finished my formal conducting training. Having 2 years at a big company like E&O is perfect, because I can really cut my teeth and see how an opera company works, what is really required. The job of a conductor, especially, I'm not just assisting one conductor, I will be assisting many different people. So yeah, in that way it works really well. And I think as a singer as well, if you've just finished training and you've been through the enormous amount of degrees that you can do to be qualified as a singer now, that you just it's good to have a kind of, okay, I'm here, I'm going to do this young artist thing for 2 years, maybe would be great. I think 1 year, often they're 1 year long, and I think maybe 2 years would be better. But obviously, because there are so many singers, companies don't have to do that. They can just keep changing. But then I think when you get into sort of mid-career, I think the change and the agility and keeping the story fresh, as Peter was saying, I think is really crucial. And the diversity is really necessary for that. Otherwise, we're just going to keep telling the same story over and over again. So yeah, a bit of a mix.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, kind of one of the big discussion points, for years, but especially at the moment, is the opportunities available to young artists, and that those seem to be kind of ever kind of diminishing. I mean, I wonder, Emma, kind of what your experience has been, kind of hot-footing from company to company and kind of meeting kind of different performers. I mean, how much you kind of feel that you're able to kind of tap into lots of kind of different singers, or is it kind of the same faces that you sort of see? I know this has been another kind of talking point recently, kind of that, as Peter was saying, that replenishment of singers or kind of new people coming in. I mean, kind of how much do you kind of feel that you're able to see kind of lots of different people in the places you work, or how much is it kind of the same sort of faces?
Very good question. I think so. I've been very lucky to work at Opera North a lot, and actually I started there in the administration, working for the chorus, and I got to know the chorus very, very well. And then I went and did the freelance life, and then going back to Opera North, it is quite lovely to see the same faces, because as well as obviously the core chorus, there are artists that are often there, and then you build relationships with people. So even though you might only be working on a show as an assistant director for 6 weeks, often you'll walk into the room on day one and you'll know half the people already, and that is lovely. So if there were to be more in-house people, you would have that all the time. But I also do really like the fact that if that you can go be in one place and experience that how they work, and then accrue knowledge there, and then take it and have it be of use somewhere else. But no, but there is definitely, each house, it feels, in this country has kind of a core group. And a friend of mine who's a conductor, he was assisting on something a couple of summers ago. I want to say at Garsington, but the main body of singers were deemed as Opera North favourites. So I think on day one, the conductor was like, "Welcome to Opera North on tour," because it just felt like an Opera North room. So that there is a bit of that going on.
Okay, so some interest for the opera house idea, but I agree that that ability to kind of go from place to place is very attractive as well. Let's go on to our kind of first listener suggestion then. We've had kind of a lot on this sort of theme, which is kind of bringing back operas made for television, or making operas kind of specifically made for the screen. The ability to reach thousands and thousands of audiences. We've seen lots of stuff going on over lockdown, and so kind of bringing back a more regular model of making opera specifically for film, in this case specifically for television. I mean, Olivia, what's your kind of experience been over lockdown of kind of seeing things made for screen? I mean, do you think that we're kind of ready to ramp that up yet? I'll be honest, from my point of view, I've seen more things that have been well-intentioned attempts than things that have kind of been really excellent things kind of made specifically for the screen. But what about yourself? Is that kind of the way forward? Would you love to be in a sound studio making things for television?
Do I actually really would love to do some film music conducting, because it's just such a different thing, but not continuously. I'd just like to do it once, But that's another thing. I think you might be kindly referring to one of the things I tried to do in your in your summary of the lockdown videos. But I certainly think what I did fell into that category. But yeah, there's been a lot of stuff online, and every sort of singer, conductor, musician has become an expert in video editing, and I've completely wrecked my laptop by downloading far too many programs and having so many videos. I've got hard drives coming out my ears because of this, and I don't really know what to do with it all now. But it's been interesting, and what has been really cool is how creative and inventive we can all be in that time. But I don't think long term it's really what we want to aim for, particularly with singing, just because with opera singing in particular, those overtones that make the hair on the back of your neck stand up, and that the pleasure that you get from not always watching the lead singer in the room, and maybe I actually want to look at the double bassist, like, oh, he's doing something really cool. Unforgivably sexist. You can't do that if somebody's chosen a camera angle for you, and the sound engineering is so much better now, and the technology is so nearly there. But yeah, so I'm a bit mixed about that. But certainly the lockdown videos, I really hope that's the end of those.
Peter, we had another comment completely against that. Someone just quite plainly saying, I don't enjoy online opera. I want live opera back. I mean, is opera for screen a completely different world? Is that a different product almost? You know, can we think about them in the same way? Is opera a live experience?
I think so, because I think what we've seen over lockdown is that opera viewing online then becomes more of a solitary pursuit. Whereas when we're in a theatre, and I know that when I'm going to the theatre, I love to watch other people and see how they're reacting to what they're seeing on stage, and that's all part of the fun. And it's a communal experience of us sitting with other people and enjoying what's on stage. And yeah, the sooner we can get back to that's what I'm longing for, that experience, and being in the theatre. And I think it's great that the digital aspect of what we do has come to the fore during lockdown, and the two can coexist. But yeah, ultimately we're I think the goal is to be back in the theatre.
I mean, Emma, how would you feel if someone came to you, and said, please, can you actually basically be a film director rather than an opera director? Is that something that kind of appeals to you? So kind of creatively, I suppose, would it be an interesting idea for you to get your hands on something like that? Or for you, are you always thinking about the stage? Is that where opera is?
I mean, I love a challenge. I have literally no experience at all in filming, so I would probably, my career would go backwards many years, and that would be frustrating. But I think it's that, as both Olivia and Peter have said, there is something about the live communal experience. I went to one of Opera Holland Park's concerts a couple of weeks ago, which was my first time hearing live music since February, and I knew it would be emotional, but I still cried a lot because there's just nothing like it. Having said that, though, I think there have been some really brilliant things out there. The Telephone, which Scottish Opera did as part of the Edinburgh International Festival, was really good, and that was Daisy. What is her surname? Sign off. Thank you. Sorry, Daisy. That was Daisy. Yeah, and I thought that was really, really brilliant. And so and just because it was clearly never meant to be in a theatre, that it was so specific for the screen. I thought that's good. Really good.
Yeah, well, I think Scottish Opera have definitely led the way. I mean, on our last podcast, we had Antonia Bain, who's I forget the official title, but she's the digital producer or whatnot of Scottish, and as well as the Telephone that they did, they also did this opera just for film, The Narcissistic Fish, which was a short opera made specifically for film, which I thought was fantastic. And there have been some great television operas. The first opera we did as a company, Amal and the Night Visitors, works really well on stage, but that was originally a television opera. I love this idea that it won't happen, but BBC One, 3 p.m. on a Sunday afternoon, we have, our monthly hour-long television opera. I think Trouble in Tahiti, I think that might have been another one for television originally. So definitely kind of come out.
Owen Wingrave was definitely for TV first,
Yeah, so whether it's something that, let's not get bogged down on whether it can happen, whether it should happen. I mean, I think the idea of looking at opera and film as its own sort of genre itself would be really, really exciting. I can definitely commend the work that Scottish have been doing in Antonia. There's been some fantastic things out there. And I definitely don't want to diminish people's online efforts over lockdown. I mean, I myself have done a number of online things which have been of variable technical proficiency. So I'm definitely not one to speak on that on that line. So going to Emma, I asked each of you to kind of prepare an idea to kind of discuss today as to what the future of opera should look like. So Emma, can we kind of hear what you were thinking about?
Yes, so it was a model that was starting to gather a little bit of steam before lockdown happened, and basically my hope is that it will continue to. So it's the incredible work of SWOPRA, which is supporting women and parents in opera. And they were driving for companies to publish schedules a good amount ahead of time, so that those who are parents or carers can, and are working away from home, can truly plan ahead and plan their other responsibilities. And that kind of, just that shift of, I feel that maybe 20 years ago people would not really talk about their outside life. And I went to a Women in Opera symposium about 5 years ago, and one of the female directors was like, I just don't tell people that I've got children. And I was like, that's not ideal. So I think what SWAPRA were doing with encouraging companies to plan ahead, I would love for that to become the norm. And also, if I could make a request for in-house childcare, that would also be brilliant.
I mean, Peter, is being an opera singer conducive to kind of having I wouldn't say a normal life, but kind of a life that can sort, that can sort of work for you? Is there more that companies could do to kind of look after singers better in terms of enabling them to have that balance, rather than being called at all sorts of weird hours of the day and Saturdays, all that sort of thing? Or is that just kind of part and parcel of the existence?
I'd say that it is an unusual existence, but something that I've noticed, and with the advent of SWAPRA and more concern for mental health and well-being, that companies are really making an effort to look after their singers and performers. So I've always felt really supported, and that's a great thing to feel when we're often working long hours, when you get to tech weeks and it becomes so much more intense. And yeah, it's always quite an intense experience being thrown together for a short period of time. And but yeah, I feel like there is an effort now to change scheduling and think further in advance. And so that's something that I hope will continue and grow throughout this period and afterwards. And
now, Olivia, I know that you were thinking along sort of similar lines to Emma, maybe from a little bit kind of a different perspective, but that sort of idea of well-being for artists was something that you were interested in kind of talking about, looking to the future.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, I mean, the sort of title, The Future of Opera, is a pretty daunting one. But I think that the well-being idea, and what Peter, you're saying about mental health, I definitely feel there's been a progress in my sort of lifetime. I started off as a singer and only started conducting about 4 years ago. And when I was a singer, I was there wasn't the right, I didn't feel able to speak out about difficulties. I didn't feel like that network was there. And now I see it sort of actively there in the rehearsal room. So I will say that's changing. What I don't think is changing fast enough, in my opinion, is the equality and diversity within, and inclusivity, just to use all the itchy words, in opera, specifically opera. Classical music in general has a problem with this, but I don't know as much about it. And why is this rate of change so slow? I had a conversation with a few conductors over lockdown. It was sort of one of these get all conductors together kind of thing. And I sort of asked what I thought was quite an easy question. They were people who were slightly more advanced than I was in career. And I said, how has opera changed in your careers? And both as a business and an art form. And they said, oh no, it hasn't, it doesn't need to, it's perfect as it is. And there's no issue. And the reason they answered like that is because the model of the world as it stands suits them absolutely perfectly. They did all happen to be white men of a certain generation. And I do think that that's a big issue in the opera world, is that we're hearing a lot about women in leadership positions. There's a lot in the press about women conductors. This is something specific to me. But actually, if you look at the statistics, they don't match up with the amount of coverage that it's been given. There is still no female music directors in any of the UK houses. And there's only 1 or 2 in Germany. Germany has 83 opera houses. And I think there are 2 female general music directors. And 2 of them have just left. So that number's just depleted by half. So it's a big problem, and I didn't want to sort of just put a downer on it, but I think that that it's something to talk about, and it's something to just say. People honestly ask me about it all the time, as if, and they always say the things. Oh well, there are so many women conductors now, and I just sort of wanted to say that that's really not the case. And often the people that I meet in that kind of circumstance, so if I'm doing a sort of women conductors course or whatever, everyone you're meeting, you're pushing an open door. There's no traction with the outside world, and you're networking within a pre-existing supportive network. So that doesn't, I don't think the impact is really going to carry. And I think post COVID, it's something to pay real close attention to, and to not have this idea that it will just naturally trickle down, that patience is the answer, and that in 30 years it will just be 50-50, because I just don't think it won't be.
Well, I think it's such a hot topic at the moment, especially, this idea that there was lots of things that people were trying to change and develop, kind of pre-COVID, and the real worry is that when things start to get back to some sort of sense of normal, all of that kind of progress and discussion will be kind of halted, and I think something else on a similar line that, I've noticed of the operas that are going ahead this autumn from the big companies, Opera North, Scottish Opera and English National Opera, all of them are doing La Boheme. It's not quite the same thing, but it's that sort of sense of, before COVID, we were all trying to, change the repertoire, get different things in there, and now everyone's sort of battening down the hatches and going back to the old sort of favourites. I mean, Emma, if we're kind of holding this discussion on what should the future of opera look like, what would you kind of like to see in 6 months, a year time, in terms of trying to change some of these stories? What should we be aiming for to kind of see out there, so we actually see some sort of change?
I think more diversity, and we just need to. There's this whole generation that I feel now we're kind of ready to kind of make their mark, and then we've all gone into lockdown, and I would hate to lose them and their energy and what they bring, because when you talk about why aren't there enough female conductors, why aren't there enough BAME artists, and a lot of it is there's a whole myriad of things that I am not qualified to talk about, but education is such a huge part. So if you say that maybe in the last 10 years there has been a sort of a rate of change in the education system, which I hope there has been, that is now being cut off, and for us to slip back would just be not ideal at all. So I think companies just need to make a commitment to carry on with what they were trying to do. And even if it's just a simple thing as, let's say that the next one of our next productions that we do, it's an all-female team, and that's, I can name 20 female directors, 20 female designers, Olivia will help me name 20 female conductors, and and then that's that. And then, almost as if by magic, you've made a change. And if you do it once, there's no reason why you can't do it every year, or, twice a year. And I think it's just keeping the momentum going.
In terms of, again, this sort of thing of what would we kind of hope to see, kind of what should be the change? I mean, Peter, I wonder if is there some sort of call for flipping opera on its head? I'm not saying let's take down all the heads of the UK opera companies, but if we're kind of thinking in terms of, let's just kind of imagine some sort of interesting future a year from now? Is it, let's just get a completely kind of new group of people to the table? As Olivia said, there's lots of people that have been there for a long time, very happy to kind of go on the status quo. Is it a case of just completely shaking things up? Is that what we should be thinking about doing?
I think it's more a case of looking and looking at the world around us and making what we're doing and ourselves reflective of that. And yeah, that's the easiest way of putting it I can find, is that we need to be a mirror of society, and so what's happening on the stage, behind the scenes, on the boards, needs to be reflective of our society and our communities. And yeah, something that really worries me is that people will be turned off the profession because of what's happening at the moment. And it's hard enough anyway trying to get that step up the ladder when you leave an institution, but in this climate it's even worse. And for those already in the profession, there are many people already thinking of going off and doing other things. So yeah, if you're leaving an institution and wondering how to get on in the profession, then yeah, this is a time when you need to be given some hope and a lifeline. And I'm really encouraged to see things like Barbara Hannigan's initiative Momentum, to give opportunities to young professionals to have a 10-minute slot in a more established performers recital, for instance, and get paid for it. And I think lifelines like that are really crucial to enable performers to carry on and have some hope, and not feel like it's going to be this huge hike up to building a profession. And also, if you're from a low income background as well, and you've just left an institution, your family aren't in the industry, you don't have those connections, then yeah, you're less likely to want to progress in this profession. And I think we need to be thinking about those things and the grassroots, and as Emma was saying, the education work. And I've been involved in some great education initiatives at ENO, especially Opera Squad, and that work is really crucial to showing young people what opera is and what it can be. And so those things, making sure that they are still nurtured over this time, that's what really worries me, that those connections might be lost because of economic circumstances and the pandemic.
Yeah, I think that idea of keeping those kind of connections and being able to build a career whilst a lot of performance is still on hold is a really, really interesting one. I mean, Emma, in terms of your career, I mean, you're kind of getting back into some work at the moment, especially kind of after having a baby and kind of having that time off as well, trying to kind of get the work back up and running. I mean, do you kind of feel as though you've got those kind of hooks in the mountain that you can sort of start kind of climbing up to make those connections again, to kind of get re-engaged with the opera world? I mean, how do you kind of feel that the outlook's kind of looking for kind of people like you who are kind of already kind of working well in the industry? Do you kind of know where kind of things are going next?
I mean, as much as anyone knows what's, the emails that I've been sending recently, I've put in, I'm very aware that the arts world is very shaky. I've been freelancing I've been in the opera world for exactly 10 years now. So I do have a base of connections, which has served me out. I mean, I went on maternity leave in February 2019, and had my little boy in April of that year. And he was 10 days old when Scottish Opera offered me an assistant job that would start in February 2020. So that was then just a huge weight off my mind, because I knew that I'd have 9 months at home and then would go to Glasgow, baby in tow, and work for them for a couple of months. Obviously, I did about a month of that, and then the pandemic hit, and we all went home. But that there's the constant freelance juggle. I think where we are now, that opera companies are being we're kind of more aware of kind of what the seasons are starting to look like, and that really 2020 there's stuff going on, but really I think people are now looking forward ahead, and I think that places like Holland Park and Loughborough, and I don't know for sure, but I imagine Glyndebourne and the country house operas that are normally happening in the summer, I think they are really very much hoping that their 2021 can go ahead as normal, or whatever normal is. So it is just always a case of, there's never enough work anyway, and there's even less work now. And I definitely have also been trying to think, well, what am I going to do if, everyone. And actually, when I first went freelance, a director friend of mine, I assisted him. Like my third job ever was assisting him, and he took me for a drink after the dress rehearsal and went, "But what is your second skill?" Like, I don't know exactly. You need to, whether it be tutoring, teaching, doing something else. He's like, you're gonna need it. You might think you won't, but you will need it. And he was very, very correct. So.
And is that something that we just sort of accept as being part of this industry? So. Or in terms of, is that something we should be aiming to change, or is that just something we accept?
I mean, I think if you're a singer, then and you want to sing full time, then what you're saying, your very first point, David, then the fest model would be ideal, because there are not enough in this country in-house choristers, which obviously in Germany it's a way of life as being a full-time chorister, and it's a brilliant way of life, because if you want it to be, it's a job for life. And that really suits some people. Some people want to do it for 3-4 years and then go and do something else. But I think people don't. I think in general, people are getting better about talking about life outside of opera, whether that be mental health or childcare, or that actually I also have a second job that I do, and that pays the bills. And I think people are getting better at being more open. But it is a reality. Very few people in this industry work full time in this industry, which is why when the pandemic hit, there was just this whole plethora of freelancers that was like, right, okay, this is not great.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and actually something that we should look to change is that, if you are a singer but do other jobs as well, is kind of not being ashamed or kind of shy about that. I am a singer and I also do other work as well. I think that's, I run an opera company, but I also do lots of other work as well, and that's fine. And just kind of accepting that that's kind of the way the industry work, and that people live their lives. I think that would be kind of a great thing to be able to change. Kind of being able to talk a bit more openly about that. I felt we've got quite serious, so let's just kind of pick on a couple of quick subjects here, looking to the future. So one question we've got, point that came in, said there's a gulf between new opera and popular art forms. Can popular music become opera? I mean, not a lot of people agree with me, but I loved last year that Kanye West did 2 operas. Dramaturgically, there may have been problems, but I think it's fantastic that he said, I want to do an opera, and I'm going to do it my way. And it brought a whole new different type of people to come and see something that was called an opera. So I'm all for this, different ways of thinking about opera. For me, Hamilton, fantastic piece of work. Why can't we call that an opera? I mean, what do you kind of think, Olivia? This kind of bringing together of the popular, which I know is something that Stuart Murphy, your boss at English National Opera, is kind of quite keen in, and opera. Is that something we should be trying consciously to do more of?
Yeah, definitely. Not just to tick the ENO box here, but I do personally feel that too. I think it is really important to keep opera relevant, and so this is a sort of buzzword that's been bandied around a little bit, like what is relevance? I mean, it should be emotional, it should be connective, it should speak to people, and it shouldn't just speak to the same kind of demographic that it's been speaking to for about a century now. It should be changing, and I think incorporating pop, different types of music. I really want to tell you something about Driving Live, but I won't. But anyway, there may be a bit of that in there. Who knows? Come and see it. You know, so there's always a way to fuse art forms together, and I think it should be used. I also love the use of technology in opera. I love it when there's like a film screen and when there's some techie stuff going on. I don't understand it, but I just think it just adds another dimension, and it's really cool. But I also love just one singer on a stage with an orchestra doing something very simple with a chair or something. I don't know. Emma, this is your territory.
That's a really useful.
But yeah, I'm all for it, and I had another point. It's just gone out of my head. But yeah.
I mean, what about you, Peter? I mean, I don't know about you, but for me, you know, there are some great operas there, you know, your La Bohèmes and whatnot. But as you were kind of saying earlier, those sorts of things just aren't going to speak to everybody. Is kind of a new way of looking at things, and a way forward might actually just to really embrace lots of that kind of more, not only kind of popular music, but kind of pop culture and stuff into opera. Is that kind of a great way of speaking to a different generation of people?
Yeah, I think it's one way, but I think our operatic canon, the repertoire we have, is robust enough for us to use it to tell stories that are relevant to us now. And but that's not to say I'm not against collaboration and bringing in other styles. But I think at the core, it has to be about what we're trying to say and who we're saying it to, and yeah, that sort of dialogue is always there, and so that it never becomes a bit of a novelty or a fad. It's a collaboration with meaning, and we're trying to change people's minds or get them to question something, and that's when it becomes really exciting, if we're demanding something of the audience and they're asking questions back of us. And
can I just chime in there? I agree, and I think that what I wanted to add is that as soon as you have a trained opera singer singing with using their body as amplification, as resonance, I know that was sort of another touching point. You have an opera, so if you have that in a sort of a very different, displaced, popular music kind of way, you still have an opera. So I agree that also we can do Bohème in that way. There's no reason why not. Like, this music, as you said, Peter, is robust enough to take a bit of a bashing and to be moved around a little bit, shaken up. Definitely needs a lot of shows, and a lot of the words changed as well, because quite frankly a lot of it's outdated, but it is hundreds and hundreds of years old, so that's fine. So yeah, I think as long as the opera voice doesn't get diminished in any way, and that skill, that really impactful, emotional, raw skill is put at the top, we'll be fine.
You've made me very intrigued for the E&O La Bohème. Lots of little hints in here, which is making it sound very, very interesting. One quick thing to kind of finish on. We had one suggestion come in, which said more opera outside an opera house that's not for kids. I mean, I think what this is referring to, that a lot of the time, you know, the kind of outreach operas and whatnot, which can be really fantastic pieces in themselves, tend to go to lots of different weird and wonderful venues, but it's very rare that a big kind of production gets out of the opera house. You know, I think one example is the Royal Opera House did Orfeo at the Roundhouse a couple of years ago, which was fantastic. The La Bohème going to Alexandra Palace, I think, probably is another example. But Emma, with your kind of directing hat on, does kind of getting out the opera house kind of give you some interesting kind of thoughts for the future? Would you kind of love to do more stuff kind of outside of that environment? And I suppose from Olivia and Peter's musical perspective, does that idea of having to do things in car parks and shopping centres absolutely terrify you? Emma, first of all.
I mean, I love site specific stuff. Always have done. And I've worked on some really big site specific projects, and I also directed something that was actually in someone's living room, and it was a very big living room in Harrogate. It was beautiful, but we got 50 people in, and it was a living room that happened to have a mezzanine balcony. So the orchestra went on the balcony, and we did William Morton's The Bear, and it was brilliant. The singers were brilliant. But that kind of, you don't necessarily need the proscenium and the pitch and the beautifully raked audience. So yeah, I think, it doesn't have to be in an opera house. And I think we need, as just in general as an industry, we need to be slightly more fleet of foot in these times, and doing stuff outdoors is probably going to be one of the ways forward, so that we can get more audience in, because at the moment I think trying to get people physically into a building is tricky, as I'm sure Olivia can speak to how you're conducting rehearsals at,
Yeah, it's hard. It's a minefield, but it is solvable, and there is a way through it. And I completely agree that it's amazing to have to use that skill, that necessity to be able to just get out and put on an opera anywhere, and outside, definitely. But there is just something about an opera house that, like, that kind of plush decor and the feeling, it has a very spiritual feeling for me. It's like walking into a big cathedral, and I get it more in an opera house, to be honest. So I have both of them. I do have that sort of love. I really want to get back into the collie. I really, really want to see that velvet curtain again. So yeah.
And Peter, from the singer's perspective, does it fill you with dread if you're taking outside the opera house, or is that something you look forward to?
Not really. I suppose obviously there is this luxury of having amazing acoustics in a specific opera house that's built for that. But I've done The Emperor of Atlantis with Polly Graham twice now in the car park in Peckham, and to have that intimacy and relationship with the audience who are in the round sitting on straw bales is second to none. And I think it's also a great way of taking opera to people and communities as well. And I think that's something that we always have to be mindful of, is that people won't always want to come to us. So yeah, we should go out there and take it to them and see if they want it.
I think that's a great sentiment to end on for today. Lots of things that we've discussed. Do keep the conversation going. You can find us on Twitter at OperacastPod, Facebook at Operacast, and Instagram at Operacast. We're not going to end today with our usual Operacast quiz, which I'm sure our panelists are delighted to hear. So instead, I'd recommend you head over to our Facebook page to take part in the lockdown quiz we recorded back in April. I think that Emma still has the leading high score, so do take part.
Not very high.
Let us know what you get and see if we can knock Emma off the leaderboard. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. Of course, a huge thank you to Peter, Olivia, and Emma for joining us. This event has been part of this year's Leeds Opera Festival. There are still lots of events going on over the next couple of days, so do head over to northernoperagroup.co.uk to see the full list of events taking place online and in person. All the events are free to attend, but if you've enjoyed this Operacast or any of the events of part of the festival, you can make a donation in support of Northern Opera Group's work by texting NOG, N-O-G, to 70085 to donate £5. Thank you to Emma for joining us today.
Thank you, David. Thank you for, lovely to meet you both, Olivia and Peter.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you to Olivia. I hope you have a lovely time doing your, driving live.
Thanks very much. See you all there.
And thank you, Peter. Look forward to seeing some more of the Getty Challenge stuff.
Yeah.
And kind I'm actually kind of getting back to singing again.
Yes, yeah.
In the future.
And thanks for having me. Thank you.
Not at all. Thank you for joining us, and our regular Operacast programming will be back with you from the middle of September onwards. Thank you all very much, and goodbye.